The Beatles. The name, of course, is legendary, but before the stadiums and global superstardom, they were just 5 young musicians grinding it out in the gritty nightclubs and back rooms of Europe. Just a few years ago, I chased that legacy back to Liverpool, charting their rise from Matthew Street to the iconic stage of the Cavern Club, where they played an astonishing 300 times. But today we are crossing borders. We've landed in Hamburg, Germany, the crucible where John Lennon once said that he may have been born in Liverpool, but he grew up right here in this city. On these streets that I'm standing on right now, that I'm going to be walking through in this video, the Beatles quite literally became the Beatles. So in this video, we are stepping into the shadows of their youth, visiting the very spots where the Beatles sharpened their sound, forged their identity, and transformed into the force that changed music forever. Our mission starts at the tribute every Beatles fan needs to see, Beatles Platz, which was built in their honour. I am going to leave behind the outlet to the underground station of the Reeperbahn, and we are going to head towards Beatles Platz, see if we can find it. We are in the St. Pauli district of Hamburg this morning, and this is where all of the Beatles history in the city is. This is where you want to come. And if you're wondering what that noise is behind me, by the way, I'm not sure if you can hear it, but there is a helicopter operating in the skies above me. Right, Beatles Platz is just across the road. There we go. You can possibly just see it over there. But it is at the location where 2 important streets meet. Number 1 is the Reeperbahn, and that's this street here going off alongside me as I stand. The Reeperbahn is the entertainment street of Hamburg. This is where you'll find all the nightlife and important clubs and pubs. It is also the red light district of Hamburg, and it even was back in the days when the Beatles were here. Perpendicular to this street right here, so just see if I can show you what I'm talking about. There's the Reeperbahn again, and as I come round, that's where I currently stand. If I come across here and we look at Beatles Platz on the other side of the road, you can see a road heading off in that direction. Well, that is a road called Große Freiheit. Well, that's the direction we'll see a lot of Beatles history, but we'll get to that. First of all, we've got to cross this busy road. Well, we have made it to Beatles Platz, right at the heart of the tribute. I'm almost in the center. By the way, temperature today in Hamburg, -3, feels like -6, and boy, does it feel like -6. I am wrapped up like a good one. In any event, I want to show you the statues that are positioned here, because we have 5 statues that represent the 6 Beatles. 6, I'll explain more as the video goes on, but here we go. So we have 4 statues right here. We have statues of John, Paul, George, and then a hybrid of the 2 drummers, Pete Best and Ringo Starr, of course. And you're probably wondering, well, where's the other statue? If I come around to the right here, we have a statue off to the side, and that statue represents Stuart Sutcliffe. If you get here nice and early, you are almost guaranteed to get a good view across the whole square with not many people or vehicles about. But bear in mind that vehicular access is allowed on the square to get to some of the roads around here. So if you see the square nice and free, take your photos quickly, because you never know when a lorry is going to turn up, park in the middle of the Platz, and there goes all of your photos. But in any event, let me tell you a little bit more about the Beatles arriving here. So 17th of August 1960 is when the band first arrived in Hamburg, and back then they weren't the Fabulous 4 that we all know today. They were actually the Fabulous 5. There was 5 members of the band: John, Paul, George, Pete Best on drums, and then a 4th guitarist called Stuart Sutcliffe. When the band left Liverpool 2 weeks beforehand. They were having a 2-week break before arriving here, but when they left Liverpool, they were known as the Silver Beatles, and it's sometime in that 2-week period they changed their name from the Silver Beatles to the Beatles. Even though we are here in the morning, you can really make out that this is going to be a bright, vibrant, loud, busy area during the evenings and probably throughout the nights as well. It is just surrounded by pubs and restaurants and taverns and nightclubs. Beatles Platz itself was built to commemorate the legacy of the Beatles in this part of Hamburg. I called it a square earlier, but actually it's anything but. If you look at it, it is a circular Platz, and it is designed to look like an old vinyl record, 29 meters in diameter, that's about 100 feet. It was built in 2008, opened on the 11th of September of that year, took 3 months to build and cost about £500,000. Now, if you follow the vinyl record around and you just have a look at what's inscribed into the pavement, you will see a whole load of Beatle song names. Once again, I'm not sure how much that helicopter is coming out on the microphone. It is incredibly loud, but it's been operating for the last hour, so sometimes you just got to get on with it. So hopefully it's not coming out too bad. But in any event, the Platz here is a fantastic place to just come and start your tour of Beatles history in Hamburg. Right, I think what I'm going to do is, we've got the Reeperbahn in that direction, and then if I come around here, we've got lots of deliveries being unloaded, but perhaps more importantly, a street called Große Freiheit. And we're going to take a walk up there, see if we can find the first club the Beatles actually played in when they came here to Hamburg. Back in Liverpool, the Silver Beatles were under the management of a guy named Alan Williams, and he made a deal with a German nightclub owner here in Hamburg, a guy called Bruno Koschmider, to send the Beatles across here for a 2-month residency at one of his nightclubs. He owned 2, the Kaiserkeller, but he wanted to use them at a place called the Indra, which was a nightclub on this very road. We're going to come up to it in just a couple of moments. He agreed to pay the band €2.50, back then that was 30 Deutschmark, per day per person for their services here in this nightclub. So remember, they arrived here in Hamburg on the 17th of August 1960. Later that night, on the very same day, they were playing right here in the Indra Club. And this was very likely the first ever appearance of the Beatles, because remember, before this point, they had been known as the Silver Beatles. Bruno Koschmider, who ran this club, was known to push the acts that worked for him like dogs, demanding that many of them played through the night, because that's when the guests, the visitors, the people that came here to watch the music and acts, that's when they wanted to be entertained. So this venue is definitely associated with the Beatles playing long shows that quite often would go on all night long. These days it is still a live music and entertainment venue, so if you come here in the evening, chances are there's some kind of show on. There is some boards outside of the building advertising some of the acts, comedy shows, live music and other events that are being hosted over the next couple of weeks and months. When the Beatles played here, they had a few problems, and one of them was they had nowhere to sleep. They were poor Liverpudlians. They didn't have much money to spend on really comfortable accommodation, so the owner of the club, Bruno Koschmider, agreed to put them up in a storeroom of a nearby cinema that he owned. And that cinema, that location, is what we're going to try and find next. Here we go again, just on the other side of the road here. That's what we're looking for. This is the Bambi Kino, a former children's cinema, also owned by Bruno Koschmider, and a place where he would allow the Beatles to live whilst they were playing at his clubs. To quote Paul McCartney, he once said about the place, "We lived backstage at the Bambi Kino, next to the toilets. You could always smell them. The room had been an old storeroom and there were just concrete walls and nothing else. No heat, no wallpaper, not a lick of paint, and 2 sets of bunk beds with not very much covers. Union Jack flags. We were frozen." It wasn't an ideal place to stay because the band would be playing late into the night, maybe even early hours of the next morning. And when they got back, they tried to sleep, but the cinema would open up in the morning and wake them all up. So they were kind of forced to get up at that point. Anyhow, the building these days is a private residence. It is now a house that is privately owned and privately lived in, so you do have to respect the privacy of the owners. But before we go and move on, I want to show you a few things. So if we can cross the road, it's not the busiest of roads, it's quite a colourful, decorative neighbourhood, but if we go over here, there's a garage door with Bambi drawn onto it. Unfortunately, it has been graffitied over. Just next to Bambi, we also have a window here with a photograph inside taken of the Beatles around about the time when they lived here. And then next to that, we have another plaque signifying the important year 1960 when the Beatles were here. And here is the current entrance. Tell you what, it might be cold, but it is a lovely sunny day here in Hamburg. I'm very lucky to have this weather. The next part of the story is that the Beatles played at the Indra Club for about 40 nights until the 3rd of October 1960, when it was closed down due to noise complaints from local residents. The Beatles were moved to the 2nd club, owned by Bruno Koschmider, a place called the Kaiserkeller, and they began playing there the very next night, the 4th of October 1960, and the Kaiserkeller is where we're heading to next. Well, I guess it's midday and we have found our next location, the Kaiserkeller, just on the other side of the road. Whoa, more bells. We are being treated today. They are loud. The Beatles would play at this club for 56 nights between the 4th of October and the 30th of November 1960. And whilst they were playing here, 2 very significant things happened in Beatles history. Number one, they were alternating with their shows with another Liverpudlian band called Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. The drummer for that band was one Ringo Starr. The other significant thing that would happen is they met a Hamburg-born photographer and artist called Astrid Kircher. Astrid would help the Beatles develop their appearance, including their clothing and also their famous early 1960s mop haircuts. She would also fall in love with one of the band members, Stuart Sutcliffe, who she later on had a relationship with. The Kaiserkeller continues to be part of the St. Pauli music scene. It is still open, although not right now. Most evenings it is open. You can see in there, if you can just about see through the reflecting glass, is the box office. We've got the entrance just there and a commemorative sign detailing the history with the Beatles, and it looks like down here maybe a contract that was signed between Bruno Koschmider and the Beatles. The band were under contract to Bruno Koschmider until the 31st of December 1960. But even before then, they were known to visit other clubs in the area, including the Top 10 Club, where other bands, including the Jets and Tony Sheridan, would play, and they would often visit there, sometimes even make guest appearances on stage, something that they shouldn't really have been doing because of the contract that they were under. Well, we're back in Beatles Platz. We're passing through on our way to our next stop, and we have almost exclusively so far been along that road, but we're heading in this direction now. Before I leave these guys once again, let me tell you that the Top 10 Club was owned by a guy called Peter Eckhorn, and he offered the Beatles more money, better equipment, and a more comfortable place to live right above the club itself. The Beatles, after a little bit of thinking, decided that that would be in their best interest, so decided to break contract with Bruno Koschmider. That, of course, did not please him in any stretch of the imagination. In fact, he was livid, so much so that rumour has it that Bruno Koschmider reported George Harrison to the police for working underage. George Harrison was just 17 at the time. On the 21st of November 1960, George Harrison was deported back to England because of working underage here in Hamburg. Well, to get to the Top 10 Club, we've got to follow this little alleyway here. It says Platz der Stars and Legenden. With George Harrison gone, Paul McCartney and Pete Best returned to the Bambi Kino in order to pack up their personal belongings so that they could move right here above me in the Top 10 Club. Bruno Koschmider found out that when they had returned, they had lit a condom and pinned it onto the wall in order to give them enough light to pack up their personal belongings. He reported them to the police, and on the 29th of November 1960, they were both arrested on charges of arson. On the 1st of December 1960, both were deported back to England. At the end of this alleyway is, if I'm correct in my calculations up there, the Top 10 Club. And you can see some signs and information again on the wall here. There's not much about, but we have got a little bit of info on this signpost here. With George, Paul and Pete all gone, there wasn't many Beatles left in Hamburg, so John Lennon returned to England on the 10th of December 1960. Stuart Sutcliffe stayed for a while, but also returned in February 1961. Well, with the Beatles back in Liverpool, they did not sit on their hands. They continued the grind, and a few significant things actually happened whilst they were there. Number one is that they played their first appearance at the Cavern Club in Liverpool on the 9th of February 1961, an unadvertised lunchtime show. And that is significant because, of course, the Cavern became extremely famous in Beatles history. And this might be a good opportunity just to plug my other video that I have on this channel called Beatles Tour in Liverpool, where I explore some of the incredible places that are associated with the Beatles in Liverpool, including that Cavern Club and the St Matthew Street area, Paul McCartney's childhood home, John Lennon's childhood home, the iconic sign and location of Penny Lane, Strawberry Field, and much, much more. Another significant event that happened whilst the band were in Liverpool was that George Harrison celebrated his 18th birthday on the 25th of February 1961 and was therefore no longer illegal here in Hamburg to work. So he returned to this great city along with the band. They returned to the Top 10 Club to play 92 consecutive nights there between the 1st of April and the 1st of July 1961. It is said that they played 503 hours in total on stage, and that means that most nights they were playing 6, 7, hours. They would do that with a 15-minute pause every hour that they played. Right, we are continuing onwards. I'm enjoying this tour, I'm enjoying seeing these sights, but we are going to head to our next location. I was just about to say that this is the fourth and final club that the Beatles played in here in Hamburg, but I probably should say was, because sadly there is a plaque here on the wall saying Star Club. That's the name of the one we were trying to find. Sadly, the Star Club is no more. It closed its doors for the final time in 1969, but the entire building burned to the ground in 1983. The only thing that is left is a plaque documenting the Beatles' history at this club. And I'm going to try and find it. I can't see it. I thought it'd be a little bit easier than this. The only worry that I've got is that there is a locked gate right here. I've tried to open it, but no go. I'm just hoping that it is not behind that gate. I'm going to take a walk around the block, I think, and see if there's another way in or if I can spot the sign. By the way, it is just opposite the Kaiserkeller, which is just over the road there. I've tried a few other entrances, but unfortunately they were dead ends. So my last chance is to just have a look around here, see if I can veer in from the left. I've got a feeling that I'm not going to be able to see it. I've got a feeling it's inside that locked courtyard. But whilst I'm searching around here, I thought I would tell you that in between the Beatles returning to Liverpool from the Top 10 Club and coming back to Hamburg to play the Star Club, Stuart Sutcliffe not only left the band in order to remain here in Hamburg, he had met Astrid Kircher, of course, and had a relationship with her, but he also wanted to pursue his painting and drawing. Sadly though, 3 days before the Beatles' residency at the Star Club started, so on the 10th of April 1962, Stuart Sutcliffe died at the age of 21 of a brain hemorrhage. Oh man, I've got a feeling we are not going to be able to see that plaque. I've got a feeling that it is locked away inside that courtyard. What I'm going to do though is find a photograph of it. There are plenty online, and paste it on screen now so that you can see what it looks like. So if you want to come here, do your own tour, you'll know what to look out for. Well, in any event, we are not done yet. I have one more stop to make in this video, and even though it is not strictly speaking a Beatles stop, more of a John Lennon stop, it is one that you are going to love if I can find it. This one is probably going to be even harder to find than the Star Club plaque. On the way there, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the Beatles playing at the Star Club, because there are some noteworthy happenings. All right, just waiting to cross the road after this car. Let's go for it. And I thought what I would do is just tell you that as I'm walking along these streets and through the St. Pauli neighbourhood, I actually really like this location. It is definitely a nice place just to come and have a look, even if you're not that interested in the Beatles' history. So the Beatles actually played 3 stints there in 1962, from April all the way through to December. So I think the stints were April, and then another one in November, and then another one in December. And during that time, again, some significant things happened. Number one is that Pete Best, who the Beatles and their management didn't feel was good enough to take the band to the next level, was sacked and replaced with Ringo Starr, who I've already mentioned met the Beatles whilst playing the drums for another band right here in Hamburg. The second noteworthy thing that I want to mention is that there is a live recording of the Beatles playing at the Star Club. An amateur recorded several nights or some songs that the Beatles had played, and that was later on released as an album, The Beatles Live at the Star Club, and it's still available today. So if you're interested in listening to it, I did note that it is also available right here on YouTube. I won't play it on this channel, but I will try and link to it in the description below. It's worth a listen if you've never heard it before. And the other thing, sadly, was that the Beatles' last appearance in a club in Hamburg was on the 31st of December 1962, right at the end of the third stint at the Star Club. They would go on to play in Hamburg, I think one more time, but that was in 1966 when they were famous and they were playing at an arena, not a club. Well, I have just realised that with all of my talking, I have walked past the stop I was going to make, by my calculations anyway. So I think what I'm going to do is turn around, head back down there, left on the street, only a couple of minutes, no worries at all really. If you are interested, by the way, in doing this tour yourself, or you want a little bit more information on where the places are, then I will link to the locations in the description below this video. So if you check that out below the video, you should find the locations that you can copy and paste into Google Maps to actually see exactly where these places are. So once again, cool area that I'm in. If I just show you where I am, just so you can get a sense of what's about, you can see we've got a park through there with ghostly trees and lit up buildings across the other side. All the leaves are falling, makes it look really cool. Look at that building up there behind those trees. Over there, the same, the corner building. And I'm heading in this direction right here now, towards the sun. I was going to say, here comes the sun, but I'm not quite quick enough. In 1975, John Lennon released an album called Rock and Roll. He didn't write any new songs for it, but he recorded a whole series of old rock and roll songs that had inspired him throughout his life. 1 year before then, he was made aware of a series of photographs that had been taken by a photographer named Jürgen Vollmer in the early 1960s, when the band were young and in their infancy, right here in Hamburg. He looked through the photos, it was like walking down memory lane, and he decided to choose one of them to be the cover art for that album. Well, guess what? That photograph was taken right here in Hamburg and right here inside this courtyard, so just beyond this gate here. Now, of course, the bad news is that there is a gate, and there is also a sign here saying, let's have a look at this, keep out. However, on the official Hamburg website, it does say that this courtyard is publicly accessible and you are allowed to go inside and take a photograph of the doorway. So I am going to give it a go. Wish me luck. Okay, fortune favours the brave. Let's see what happens. All right, look, there's a lovely little dog over there. Let's just make sure that this is closed. There we go. Hello. Hello. You a guard dog? All right, let's see if we can see the door now. Is it that one or is it that one? Well, this is a dilemma. Both doors are very similar. I'm not sure whether it's the left one or the right one. So it turns out it is not the left door. I just spoke to a local guy who came out that door. He informed me that it is the right door. And when I look in the actual album art, I noticed that it has got a green frame down on the left-hand side there. So I'm pretty sure that that is the one. All right, there we go. Nobody has actually said anything to me, but I've seen 3 or 4 people that live in here now, and they don't look too pleased that I'm here, to be fair. All right, I think what I'm going to do is leave this incredible courtyard behind. I can hear someone shouting at me, actually. I'm not sure if they're shouting at me or to the person that just pulled in the car. In any event, I'm going to head off now and leave this courtyard behind. As I said earlier, the Beatles played in Hamburg in the clubs and pubs anyway for the last time on the 31st of December 1962. In early 1963, they released their first ever single, Love Me Do, which charted at 17, and they released their first ever album, which was Please Please Me. And of course, as they say, the rest is history. And it's incredible to think of the body of work that followed what happened here in Hamburg. I mean, just what, 4 years after they left Hamburg, they were starting the Sgt. Pepper sessions, recording and laying down some of the tracks for that album. So an absolutely remarkable period of time for music and of course for the Beatles. I've made it back to that little park on the corner where I thought I would just mention a few things before ending the video. I have used a number of different resources to research this video, and one of them has been from a website called Taylor on a Trip, which has a load of really great information on it. I'll link to it in the description below. And one of the last things that is written on that article is that in 1975, in Spin magazine, I believe, John Lennon, who was being interviewed, said that while he was in Hamburg, he was, I think, dating Cynthia, and he wrote on a church somewhere nearby, he inscribed John and Sin in the woodwork of this church, and that has never been found. Taylor on a Trip, I believe, went to a few local churches trying to find it, scouring the place, trying to figure out where this inscription was, but she couldn't find it. And to my knowledge, that has never been found. So if you're in Hamburg and you want a bit of an adventure, then try finding that, and I'm sure you'll be doing the Beatles History Vault a load of good if you ever do find it. Of course, there is the possibility that it has been lost over the years. Perhaps it has been renovated, or the area has been renovated, replaced or repaired, and it is lost forever, but perhaps not. So get looking. Anyhow, I am going to call it a day with the video. Thanks so much for joining me for this tour. I have really enjoyed taking a walk around the St. Pauli district here in Hamburg, Germany, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. We'll do some more exploring in this city, no doubt.